In this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about how we can learn faster and retain more by imitating the structure and the way that the brain works when we're doing our learning. So in today's day and age, there's just so many things to learn. We have skills that we need to pick up and facts that we need to learn and master for both our businesses or our careers and also just our personal fulfillment in life. The problem is, who's got the time? It takes so much time to learn a new skill or a new fact, and yet they're so important for our fulfillment and our development in life. So what I'd like to offer is a way that we can kind of shortcut the learning process. And there's not really a way that you can get out of actually doing some practice and rehearsal, but if you follow this technique, you're going to have a way to kind of really simplify the practice itself and make sure that you're focused on the things that are the most important and that are going to give you the highest return on investment. So first, I'd like to set a little framework. Whenever you're learning a new skill or a new fact or a new body of knowledge, remember that what's important about the learning is what's important to you about the learning, not what's the author's perspective, not what your teacher's perspective is, but really what is your purpose in understanding whatever this thing is and practicing it to the level, what level of mastery is really your kind of end goal. It's really important to keep that in mind because a big part of the way that the brain works is we give it a focused intention, and then from that intention, it grows neurons together and kind of then ultimately strengthens those neural pathways to the point where we can do it without thinking about it, unconsciously entirely. So that again is just a big framework that you want to think of. Whenever you're picking up a new skill or a new fact or a new body of knowledge or something like that, ask yourself, why are you picking it up? What is your end goal and how will you know that you're successful? So that's one thing to keep in mind, purpose. The other thing is the structure. So if you really take some time to step back and think about what is the structure of this skill or this body of knowledge and how does it relate back to my purpose? If you take the time to do this and really break it down, you can really focus your practice when it comes time to the practice step, and then you'll really save yourself a lot of time in practicing the wrong things or in practicing things poorly, because if you identify the skills and the structures that you need to learn to kind of get that big purpose, you'll really kind of streamline the process. And then finally, the practice. Once you've identified the things that you need to practice or the structure of the learning, then you can just put in the repetition and the time in the right places and really help yourself get there faster. So one metaphor that I kind of like to think about in kind of understanding this is the way that a spider builds a web, right? So the spider obviously has a purpose. It needs a web to kind of catch things, and then it has this structure that it's going to lay out. So what the structure is it drops that main beam, and then it drops that secondary beam, and then if you watch, it really is an iterative process of continuing to connect the smaller and smaller beams until ultimately you have a very intricate and strong web that will hold both flies and poor Ben's face when he walks through it, right? And so that's kind of the way that the brain works. We first need to lay those major beams, and then we can kind of get more and more refined through practice until ultimately we can go from, say, having to think about everything when we're driving a car. How do you shift? How do you drive? How do you gas? How do you brake? So ultimately you can get to where you're going. You just set the intention, and then you can kind of put your mind on autopilot. And that all works because the brain just keeps repeating that structure, right? So I want to talk about a couple ways to do that. One is with a concrete skill. Let's say you want to learn the guitar, right? So when you're learning the guitar, the first thing to do is pick up purpose, right? So why are you learning the guitar? Do you want to play songs for people? Do you want to play just for yourself? Is there an end goal? And if it's playing for people, maybe the first thing to do is to learn a song, right? Maybe a song that somebody else wrote so that you can kind of imitate it and learn from the songwriter in the first place. So you pick a song, that song's going to have a structure inherent to it. So it's going to have chords that you need to learn, it's going to have a rhythm that you need to follow, and then it's going to have lyrics that you need to sing. And then you'll ultimately need to be able to do all those things together. So just like that spider laying the web, what we're going to do is first learn the chords and then understand how the C chord works and the G chord works and the F chord works. And then next we're going to have to learn how to change between the C chord and the F chord and the G chord very rapidly, right? And that's kind of the next layer of kind of functionality. Then we need to learn the rhythm and how to count the music and how to time the stroke. Maybe it's a down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And so then we need to be able to practice that. Now we can reiterate and kind of tie more of those webs between the chords and the rhythms by practicing the rhythm and the chords together. And then there's the lyrics. So the lyrics you need to learn and kind of understand the process, and then you can relate the lyrics to the chords without playing any rhythm and singing the song over the chords by themselves. And you can also practice the lyrics with the rhythm without any chords and just trying to get the hang of how the rhythm goes while you're singing the song, right? And then ultimately you can put all of them together. So it's like that iterative process of the spider, and ultimately you have your purpose, which is playing the song. The same thing can be applied to another learning, which is not skill learning, but like more factual learning. So this would be like how you'd learn a book. There's a really well-known speed reading technique that most people, when they think of speed reading, they think of just moving their eyes faster along the page and like reading more words per minute, which that is a part of speed reading, but the most important part of speed reading, you could say, is doing this process that I'm talking about with the brain and actually sitting down and listing out your purpose, listing out your structure, and then doing your repetition through the book, because that's how you're really going to retain more information from that book. The purpose is the question that you have, or why you're reading the book in the first place. What are you trying to learn, or what are you trying to do with this information in your life? And how do you think that the book is going to help you to do that? With that question in mind, you can really guide the rest of this process. Then you want to understand the structure of the book, right? So you read the front and back cover, and then you understand read the chapters and the table of contents and the subheadings if they have them in that initial chapter phase. Now you process, you take a moment and you think through. This is the repetition and the connecting thing, right? So with your purpose in mind, your question, you're gonna think, all right, how do I think the structure of this book is laid out to help me answer that question? And where do I think I'm gonna find my answers most potently, right? And so then you can actually do your first pass of reading. And what you're gonna do here is you're just 1 to 2 seconds per page. You're just looking at the chapter, the subheadings, and how they fit together, and then any charts, pictures, or visuals that the author has included, right? You're just gonna go through the book really, really fast that way. You're not trying to really retain meaning. Maybe some words will stand out to you that you don't know that you can kind of like throw in your backpack to kind of look at later. But really, you're just trying to understand the layout of the book. Then you reflect. All right, now that I've done that, where do I think the answer to my question, my purpose, is going to be throughout this book? And then I'm going to focus on those parts in my next phase, right? Because just like a spider, you're laying those beams, and now you're going to go back through and lay one final layer of those kind of beams between the ideas, and you're going to this is where you actually speed read the book. So you're really kind of moving your eyes quickly through the ideas, really trying to understand the point of what is each paragraph saying? What's the object of this? How does it all fit into this section? And how is it helping to build the author's argument? But most importantly, how is each section helping to answer my question? If there are parts that don't help answer your question, you can completely disregard them, right? Because you're focusing your purpose. And as you go through these and you learn these things, you're really starting to build that framework. And then you take reflection. Now is the time and so now you can kind of imagine this web that we've built out for this book, right? And the structure that we have between all the different ideas. Now, if you want, you can actually dig back into some of the sections that were maybe most relevant or most interesting to you around your purpose, and actually read those sections at whatever pace feels comfortable for you to actually take in the information. But by the end of this process, you will have laid out a really fleshed out concept map of the book, and by repeating it several times as you go through the process, you will really retain more as you go out into the world. So I hope this idea is helpful to you and helps you to kind of like speed up your learning process. I know learning is one of my favorite things to do in the world, and it's so satisfying to be able to do it a little bit quicker because I know how my brain works and how I'm going to wire up the neurons to help me retain the information later. So if you like this idea, please subscribe to the channel because there will be more to come. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or you'd like to figure out how you can apply this to your own life or something that you want to learn in your life, let me know. I'd love to help kind of flesh out the specifics of how you do that, and you can put that in the comments.